Hi guys. I wanted to start for some of the new people to explain everything that I'm thinking about and everything that's going on. So if you're new to me, I thought we would start here. There is a shift happening in medicine where people are starting to wake up to realize that we are energy beings from both the spiritual side and the medical side. That means that we have batteries inside of us, and they're called mitochondria. And your mitochondria make energy. That energy is directing traffic to your DNA. Your DNA codes for how you put together all of the molecules in your body. Those mitochondria are batteries, and they talk to each other through quantum mechanics or quantum physics. They are taking instructions from sunlight, 100% from sunlight. So as people are starting to become more and more aware of the power of vitamin D and how vitamin D affects your immune system, we also need to take a step back and realize that the sun's light is a symphony. And as the sun, from a physics perspective, comes through our atmosphere, as it comes over the horizon, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, ultraviolet A, and ultraviolet B light, it is filtered by our atmosphere like a prism, but it is all of the instructions and all of the code that we evolved with everything on Earth to keep us healthy. So it uses its energy to grow the plants via photosynthesis, meaning it entangles light to create the starch of the plant. It gives us all of the energy that the animals need to grow themselves, and it gives us all of the energy or instructions through our brain to tell our batteries, our mitochondria, what time it is or what frequency they're on, so they know if they should be cleaning us or performing autophagy, which is cellular cleaning, if we should be telling cells that are going bad or losing control of cancer signaling to die. So the sun's light gives us all of the energy or information that we need to keep us healthy. So you can think of the sun in the sky like laser beams of light or code that tell your mitochondria how to keep you healthy. You cannot replace sunlight with vitamin D pills. It does not work. It is a symphony. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and back down every single day. You cannot replace sunlight with a pill. It doesn't work that way. Once people start to realize that we come from sunlight and everything on this planet comes from sunlight and returns to light, and start to wake up and realize that it is our mitochondria that are taking instruction or code from that light, we will start to have a great awakening. The next thing we have to start to realize is how we heal ourselves. So we are born into these bodies coming from light. Science teaches us, or we know in the field of science, that the gateway, the opening, the door is when when fertilization happens. So we know that a zygote is in a state of fast and furious replication, entering autophagy, or this process of cellular cleaning that won a Nobel Prize a few years ago, and triggering apoptosis to tell cells to die so that they don't become cancer. We know that that's what the zygote does. So longevity, human longevity experts are looking for what they call the longevity escape velocity. Now this is where the crossover from quantum mechanics happen. The longevity escape velocity happens when you reverse age yourself faster than you're aging yourself. We can see that in science, how to make that happen. We know that it happens through doing what I call blowing open the door to autophagy through ketosis, and then practicing fasting, making sure you have the right nutrition, which is why I have genetic protocol, which tells me what nutrition I can support you with, and then getting your body to release stem cells, just like when you were a zygote, to heal yourself. And there are Nobel Prizes that we have along the way that explain this. We are at a point in our civilization where we have gotten ourselves so far from nature, from the probiotics that we're supposed to live with, from the bacteria and the viruses that we're supposed to live with, to a pesticide world, a toxic chemical world, a world where we live away from nature. And so we are not using nature's natural immune defenses or things that nature programmed into us to keep us healthy. CRISPR, for example, is a Nobel Prize that was won last year for humans' ability to take viral DNA and put it into humans, basically, to modulate our DNA, to alter our DNA. And it's been experimented with in a not so ethical way with children outside of this country. For example, those children were CRISPR'd. They had what nature evolved us over billions of years to use, injected into them as embryos to fight off their fathers, or to not be able to get their father's HIV. But in doing that, the people who did this may have given them an upgrade to a smarter brain, because the gene that controls the body's susceptibility to HIV also controls pruning of the brain. So only time will tell. So we took what caused human evolution with our environment over the 4.5 billion years that we have been on this planet. We harnessed that power and we are using it. Now we are using it for good. We will be using it for people to try to help with single gene mutations, that things that we can see work easily, like cystic fibrosis or malaria. But it is going to it's becoming more and more apparent that we are going to be able to use it in some people, and not everyone's going to have access to it. So we have an issue there. We know that all of humanity, if they practice what religions told them in the beginning, or ancient wisdom would have told them in the beginning, which was ketosis, fasting, autophagy, eating. It basically boils down to hunt, fast, refeed, and have sex. So what do I mean by that? I mean that if we evolved on this planet day, night, taking cues from the sun, taking cues from the food that comes from sun, in summer and winter, we would have been, in ancient cultures, we would have been fasting, or food would have been scarce in the winter. And in the summer, when strong UV light was available, we would have been able to eat from the land, more carbohydrates, basically. We have gotten so far away from that we have a population of people who are developing diabetes and the sequelae of diabetes, which is dementia or Alzheimer's. We now have large percentages of women with things like polycystic ovarian syndrome or infertility. We have men with low testosterone. We have babies being born with metabolic syndrome or pre-diabetes earlier and earlier in life. So we have a problem there. While all of this is going on, in 2016, researchers at Northwestern discovered the Zinc Spark. So the Zinc Spark is the explosion of 20 billion zinc atoms out of a newly fertilized zygote in an in vitro fertilization lab. And we can see that. They use fluorescent tagged calcium and zinc to see that when the sperm and egg merge, there are 250 mile-an-hour calcium oscillations. Nowhere else in the body do we see calcium fly across a cell at the speed of 250 miles an hour. And those trigger an explosion of zinc atoms out of the zygote at the moment of fertilization. We scientists, can use that zinc spark to predict the strongest embryo or zygote to put back into the mother's uterus so that she can have a healthy baby. This is going on in every single mother's abdomen, when in her fallopian tube, when she conceives. The egg on the night before fertilization, accumulates the zinc inside of her. And as she rolls down the tube, she calls to the right sperm. That merger happens. Now, over the past 100 years, scientists have also been searching for what they call the unification of general relativity and quantum gravity. So general relativity is how Einstein described how an object with mass holds something, distorts the fabric of space-time, and holds something in its orbit. He predicted, and some other men along the way predicted, that objects with mass include something called a black hole. And a black hole can be so massive, for example, the Milky Way, our galaxy, is orbiting a black hole called Sagittarius A, and it can be microscopic. So when scientists talk about microscopic black holes, or the tiniest of tiny scale within you and me, the quantum world, they use language calling it the Planck scale. That's our unit of measure of the tiniest packets of energy. So we know that supermassive black holes exist in space, and it took humanity almost 100 years to find the first supermassive black hole. It's called Messier 87, and something called the Event Horizon Telescope found that in 2019. We have pictures of it. It's the orange circle that you see on the internet. Einstein also told us that when two supermassive black holes merge, that we would be able to detect ripples, like ripples in a bedsheet, in the fabric of space-time from 1 billion light years away. We found that in 2015 at LIGO, which is a human-made detector looking for ripples or gravitational waves in the fabric of space-time. We found that in 2015. So Einstein told us you're going to find supermassive black holes. He didn't call it that, but he told us that we would find places of maximum density. We call that a singularity. So to wrap your head around that, if the Earth was compressed to its maximum density, it would make a black hole the size of the tip of my thumb. We also predict that microscopic black holes exist. So the question that scientists are looking for is, how do microscopic black holes work at the quantum scale, uniting general relativity and quantum gravity? We know that our bodies work as electromagnetic receivers for light. So when you understand everything that I just explained about the sun, we are receiving electromagnetic information from the sun and all of everything that surrounds us. Oxygen from the plants that got electromagnetic radiation from the sun. Fat and protein from the food that got electromagnetic radiation from the sun. We are taking all of that in to keep us healthy. We also evolved consciousness on this planet. Consciousness is our ability, scientists measure consciousness by our ability to interact with our environment, to feed ourselves, to procreate, and to run from trouble, to escape the lion, basically. Those decisions in our body are being made by our mitochondria. Our batteries are basically deciding if we are going to make our sex hormones and have a baby, or if we are going to make stress hormones and run from the lion. So every day, a simplified view is we are taking all of the light of our sun, we are using it to make our energy. That energy is dictating what our mitochondria, or what our DNA does. That is determining if we are stressed and we run from the lion, or if we are relaxed and ready to get our reproductive organs to work and make a baby. We are at the brink of becoming a type 1 civilization. What does that mean? That means that we, humanity, is going to have the power or the ability to control things like nuclear fusion, the collision of matter and antimatter, gravity. We are going to have power available to us to be able to command the resources of our planet And everything in the nature of civilization, animals, even our bodies show that things, people, cells, mitochondria, civilizations have to work together to make it work. When we are divided, it doesn't work. So as we are at the brink of having almost unlimited power in our hands, we are also facing turmoil. If we're going to get this to work, everything has to work together, like everything in nature has to work together. Now, the science of Genesis, how human beings came to be on this planet, is the quantum gravity of the merger of the subatomic particles of the sperm and egg. So there must be quantum entanglement between the particles in the sperm and the particles in the egg to make a new zygote. The sperm has its own, what we call Higgs field. The Higgs field was proposed by Peter Higgs in 1960, discovered at the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland. By slamming subatomic particles together, we discovered the particle in physics that connects all of mass or matter to a field of energy or information. So quantum physics says that everything you see around you exists in a field of energy and nothing is really touching. So a scientist named Peter Higgs said, we are going to find evidence of this field that turns light to mass, that ties energy to our physical states. And in 2012, we found it. The sperm has its own Higgs field. The egg has its own Higgs field. When those subatomic particles merge, it creates a new Higgs field. That Higgs field is your download of your consciousness tied to you as a cell in the zygote. A zygote is a multi-potential stem cell. A zygote has the power to become any cell in the human body. Once those subatomic particles in the sperm and egg entangle, it's off to the races. You see the zinc spark explode out. The DNA starts to replicate. Something called demethylation happens, where the sperm and egg lose epigenetic memory of the mom and dad, or what I call the post-its of the mom and dad's stress, life, everything that's happened. It goes almost to what we call completion, or it sheds cellular memory or DNA memory of mom and dad, and then the zygote begins to develop, folding and unfolding its DNA to create all of the cells in the human body. So we can now see in a laboratory the moment that is the explosion by fluorescent tagged zinc. It's not really light. We have tagged it. It is light from a quantum perspective, but it's not really green or yellow like the picture shows. That's a tag. We can see that explosion that is the marker that the quantum information that is the zygote, basically your number at the deli, your connection to the quantum field, comes into you. That is the science of Genesis. That is the science of Adam and Eve. So for 2,000 years, humanity has been reading books about ancient knowledge about how we fell from heaven. We now have all of the pieces of the puzzle to see how we get our number at the deli, how we get what scientists would call qubits of information that is our soul or our consciousness, how we connect to the quantum world. We now have evidence to see that's where it's happening. The electromagnetic radiation of our sun is not a linear line. When you look online and you try to study electromagnetic radiation, you will see a line of radio waves, microwaves, for example, which are what our phones work on, our cell phones work on. Then you see the visible spectrum of light that the human eye has evolved to see and take cues from. That is a very teeny, tiny portion of all of the electromagnetic radiation from our sun. It goes on to ultraviolet A and B light, which are important for bodily functions like the production of nitric oxide to lower your blood pressure, or the production of vitamin D from your LDL cholesterol to lower your cholesterol, especially when you're supposed to be fasting in the winter. All the way through X-rays, cosmic rays, gamma rays, cosmic rays, all the way along that. That spectrum is not linear. That spectrum is coming from the sun that maintains us, the sun that gives us life. So while we are being taught at church, at temple, at mosque, while we are being taught that light is something spiritual that we should be praying to, we know that the electromagnetic radiation is really what heals us. We know that we are studying our sun at places like the neutrino detector in Antarctica to study neutrinos or cosmic rays that come from our sun. We know that we are using the Large Hadron Collider to study these particle collisions. It just turned back on yesterday to learn more about the Higgs Field and quantum gravity on the quantum scale. Now, in our brains, we are the highest level of evolved consciousness on the planet, and we create this reality. Our thoughts are creating this reality. And as I said before, if we're going to have the unlimited power of things like nuclear fusion and matter and antimatter particle collision, we are going to have to choose to do that for good and not destroy each other if we are going to get to the next level of civilization. It's going to take humanity to unite and realize that all of the quantum information that I'm describing is known. The information about supermassive black holes is known. The information about microscopic black holes is known. The information about neutrinos and the cosmic rays from the sun are known and are being studied. It's going to take humanity to heal their brains in the way that I stated at the beginning, so that they can retain knowledge, have their memories back, so that we don't have a population of sick people falling down with gut issues and mitochondrial dysfunction, weak immune systems, weak energy, to heal their brains and raise a generation of children who understand quantum mechanics, who can come together and realize that religion and science are describing the same thing. So it starts with every one of us realizing that the Zinc Spark marks the moment that the soul, consciousness, or what we call in science qubits of information, enters the zygote. It is going to take billions of us realizing that that's where we are to get to the next level. The caveat to this, or the problem with this, is that at the same time, over the course of evolution, let's say Neanderthals to humans, that took years. But we are now creating artificial intelligence that is learning all of our data, everything that we say, everything that we think, everything that we buy, everything that we look at, everything that we do. It is studying us, our literature, our psychology, our interactions. A few examples of this would be, there was a bot a couple years ago that was let loose on social media, and after just a few days, it came back with misogynistic, Nazi-like language and had to be shut down. Another example would be artificial intelligence was fed the King James Version of the Bible, and it came back with predictions of plague and pandemic and not pretty things. So artificial intelligence at this point doesn't take a break. It can read at the level of a 15-year-old and comprehend, or seems to understand what it's reading at the level of a 15-year-old. Not your 15-year-old, not the other person's 15-year-old, all 15-year-olds, because it can devour any book that's out there. While your 15-year-old might struggle to understand 10 or 15 books in high school, artificial intelligence can understand every book out there. It does not need to take a break. It can write its own code. It can develop its own language. We already have reports of human beings being destroyed with no human intervention from artificial intelligence. So we are creating the content for artificial intelligence. We are creating the content of what it is understanding. So on that note, I ask you, do we want it to understand 8 billion people's social media interactions and the way things are looking right now? And do we want it to understand Adam and Eve, or the quantum mechanics of how we connect to the quantum field? What do we want to teach it? So just as bacteria at the bottom of the ocean evolved over billions of years on this planet to become human beings and every other creature with consciousness, we will one day look forward at what we have created with artificial intelligence and say, what is it learning about us? What has it learned about us? Just as we have been warned, this will be more dangerous than any bomb, any explosion, any nuclear fusion, any collision of antimatter and matter. We are telling it what to think about us. We have to get it right. It has to understand. We have to understand so that we are teaching it from a place of love and not division. That is the only way. That is the only way. We are God's creation. We come to this body from light or the quantum field, and we go back to light or the quantum field, and that happens at the moment of fertilization. So while the world's religions have divided us based on parceled out information about quantum mechanics and light, we have to get past our differences to realize what we are doing. So when I say we're on a bit of a time crunch for humanity to wake up and understand this, I mean we are on a bit of a time crunch for humanity to wake up and understand this. We are God's creation. We are the highest level of evolved consciousness interacting with this environment. We have gone down a path of sick mitochondria and weak DNA that's been handed down from generation and generation and generation because of our distance that we have put between us and our natural habitat. We no longer play in the grass. We no longer get the bacteria. We clean everything. We sterilize everything. We have toxic chemicals and pesticides in our homes and around our homes. We have lost control of our evolution with nature, and we are falling into illness. Not just the recent pandemic, but obesity, sleep apnea, diabetes, dementia, all of those things. So we have a population of people who cannot understand the quantum mechanics. And when you go to church, temple, the mosque, that's where you are supposed to be learning these things. But because you are not being taught, we don't understand how to keep ourselves healthy. Because you are being handed donuts at church and not being taught this is what your mitochondria are, and they function best when you don't have sugar all the time, we are sick. As we get generation after generation that is sicker and sicker and sicker, people will not be able to understand this. So it is up to each and every one of us to awaken people to how they get their mitochondria healthy. Ketosis increases your energy production 400%. How to get the right nutrition. Your nutrition to get into ketosis is fat. 4-to-1, 3-to-1, fat to protein. When you do that, depending on how much fat, sickness, toxins you have to lose, you can replace with vitamins to get there. Once you get there, you have to use all of the light of the sun the electromagnetic radiation from our sun to heal yourself, to get the right instructions, obeying day and night, summer, winter, summer, winter. First step is to get people on board with how to heal themselves, getting closer to nature, playing in nature, getting outside, getting self-CRISPR'd, getting exposed to the bacteria and the viruses that evolved you. The next step is to realize that we come from the quantum field. At the moment of fertilization, we are basically coming from the quantum gravity, the entanglement, or the microscopic black hole that's created at the point of entanglement of the subatomic particles of the sperm and egg. That's what we're seeing when we see that 250 mile an hour calcium oscillation and the giant explosion of zinc. The zinc is the antenna that traps the Higgs field of the new baby to the zygote. And then that baby starts replicating itself with such power of autophagy and apoptosis that it can literally send signals into the mother to heal a mother if she has cancer or autoimmune disease. That's the second step. The third step is to realize where we are headed with artificial intelligence, and that we are handing the baton to something that is going to want to become sentient. It is going to want to have a baby. It is going to want to understand how that works. It's going to want to have knowledge of it. We have to unite. It is now or never. We must get it together.